last weekend, phew, it had everything. It had fire. It had everything. Stuff that you don't see in F1. Well, maybe for the older generations, they'll say, oh, we used to see this every weekend. Well, we certainly took a trip down memory lane because Romain Grosjean, wow, I'm amazed we're still here talking about him, that he's alive. Luckily, he is recovering in hospital in Bahrain after, of course, burning his hands and being in that awful crash where his car was split in half and the car went on fire moments later. Incredible scenes, what we were seeing in the desert back on Sunday. And, well, we know for sure he won't be taking the race this weekend in Bahrain again when it's the Sakir Grand Prix, which is the outer track around the circuit, which we're all looking forward to seeing. But also Lewis Hamilton won't be there either. We'll talk about him in a bit. But Jack, we've seen some crashes a lot of Grosjean crashes in his time, but that certainly is at the top. I mean, how lucky is he to be alive? If it wasn't for the halo, we wouldn't be talking about him breathing right now.
Yeah, and obviously, we've all had our sort of opinions on Halo, and we've all had. I mean, some of the drivers at the beginning, weren't sure about it. Romain Grosjean himself was a driver that said he wasn't, too keen on the Halo system when it was officially announced. But like you said the other day, without it being in that system in place in Formula One now, he probably wouldn't be here. I mean, that has to be one of the worst crashes we have seen. I mean, obviously, we've had a few. I think I always look at, I don't know how Fernando Alonso just sort of walked out of that crash he had with Gutierrez at Australia when he flipped out and the whole car just sort of crumpled. And he just sort of like got out of the car and just rolled out and, walked off. Obviously we've seen, worse accidents where fatalities have actually happened. But I think in terms of the almost immediate explosion that we saw with the sort of the fireball that came after it, and you heard drivers on the radio, all of them, if you look on their sort of onboards, they're all looking at, even though they're all driving at like almost 200 mile an hour to get aimed for that corner before the red flag comes out, they're all looking in their mirrors and they're all immediately on the team radios going, what's happened? I can see fire. And so it was sort of immediate. I mean, fair dues to the medic teams and obviously the medic car behind to get there. But like was stated on the actual broadcast, that they're not as fast as the Formula One cars. So, they could only get there, just as the fire was, the fire was going before the car got there, because it's a Mercedes AMG, but it's not as fast as even the Williams in terms of like the Formula One cars. But, tremendous job by everybody. I mean, I agree. I don't know how Grosjean has got away so lightly in terms of injuries. It just seems to be his hands, and I think the bottom of one of his right leg, I think it is, that's got a bit of burn injuries. But tremendously, lucky in terms of that. But when you look at the car after, even just after, once they put the fire out, you've obviously got the back half of it that's just completely sheared off. And the rest of it was in the barrier, and there was hardly anything left of that. So you just think that, obviously, they need to look at, and obviously they are looking at, how it just sort of split apart and caught fire. But in terms of the actual chassis at the front, it's tremendously well built in the the sense that Grosjean was managed to get out without any sort of injuries, to his body, in terms of losing a part of it, because, that was a huge impact. I can't remember, was it something like 40 G or 137 mile an hour he hit that barrier out? And you just think, how the hell has he got out of that so lightly? But tremendous sort of credit to the FIA and Formula One and the safety, to be honest, that he got out like that. I mean, I think I read somewhere after the race that they've only just introduced this year the race suits that I think are more, I think they're heavier, but I think they're sort of 2 times more likely to prevent fire burn or something like that. It was something, an article like that I read. And obviously they haven't done the gloves this year. And that was probably one of the reasons why he's probably got burns on his hands, because they didn't manage to do the glove aspect, but they initiated the sort of the actual suit, and obviously that's played dividends to Romain Grosjean, that that's safety's been implemented this year, and obviously they keep striving for more. And I think an incident like this is only going to help push it as soon as possible, because they're already looking at that incident, and so they should.
It's funny, the the gloves. I mean, without a doubt, this crash will certainly put in a review afterwards, and the FIA I'm sure, will make changes. And I think Ross Brawn has already addressed, they'll have to look into it and see how they can improve in the future, especially the barrier itself. I mean, but as well as I wasn't a big Halo fan at the beginning. I remember, even Toto Wolff saying if he had a chainsaw, he saw it off his Mercedes cars. And we can all joke about it, but I look at it now and it makes me realise, moments like Jules Bianchi when he went under the tractor. What if he had the Halo when that happened? Probably would be still racing now as we speak. So it's easy ifs and buts, of course, but look, it's there now. It's saved Grosjean's life, and I'm sure all of us here at Let's Talk Sport hope a speedy recovery for him. But yeah, it's quite incredible. I don't think I've seen an accident like that in F1 ever since I've been watching. Anyway, it's definitely a Niki Lauda-esque kind of incident, and luckily Grosjean didn't suffer the burns that Niki Lauda did. And Niki Lauda, as he always did, he always fought on regardless anyway. What a guy he was. But that could be it for Grosjean, couldn't it, Jack? Because there's 2 races left. He's got no contract for next year. So I guess really for him, he could just look at it and think, look, my family, that's all that matters right now. Christmas is coming up. I'm sure the last thing he wants to think about is going back out racing. But who knows? If he comes back for Abu Dhabi, it'd be one hell of a recovery.
Well, I think there was a statement he put out earlier. Obviously, he's missing the this weekend's, of course. I think, is it Pietro Fittipaldi's coming in to replace him this weekend? And I think Haas announced that they've actually one of their drivers for next year. Was it the Russian?
It was, yes, it was Mazepin.
Yeah, so he's already been announced. Yeah, so, but I think Grosjean actually put a statement out that he's going to try his utmost to get into that car for Abu Dhabi, because he knows it is probably the last time he'll get in a Formula One car. I'm guessing he doesn't want the last point of him in an F1 car, that accident. So, credit if he manages to get in there. I think if he does, he'll be strapping his hands up and obviously making sure everything's secure. And hopefully, I expect he'll be on a lot of painkillers to go into that race because of obviously the burns to his hand. But if that's what Grosjean wants to do, I think he's more than had his say in F1 to be able to say, I want to go out and have this final race. So I think Romain Grosjean probably will finish the season at Abu Dhabi. But I think, again, you've got to go to, that was a huge, absolute huge impact. And I think, when you look at, you said the sort of the Ted Kravitz Sky Sports bit after the race, where you just see, one, the barrier that he hit in the ditch, and obviously the leftovers of the front and the back of the car, I think, was towed, but the front of the car, there was absolutely nothing left, really. It was, all caught on fire, and it was just sort of the absolute shell. And obviously they will be looking at, I think, that's not normally a place of the track that people would hit. So I don't know whether that's something that they need to look into, that the whole of the track maybe needs to be secure to maybe stop that happening again. But it is in a very unlikely place that there is an accident there. But, when they're fighting on the first lap and they're so close together, they could probably have an incident anywhere. So I think maybe that's something that they're going to be looking for in the future. But, I mean, tremendous job from that incident to then, I think it was about an hour and something before they got the race underway again. But then it did make me chuckle a little bit that first lap of the restart, Stroll's upside down, and you think, Christ, what's going on in this race? Are we even going to get this race going again? It was another red flag, was it? I think after that, or was it a safety car? I can't remember.
There's always a flip, isn't there, in Bahrain?
Yeah, there's always something. And I thought, oh God, Stroll had that pole position last in Turkey, and then he had the issues on the race, and now he's been flipped over in Bahrain. He's not having a great end to the season, is he?
He's not. Maybe maybe it would help if Perez had his seat instead for next year, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton, because he's been tested positive for COVID, so that means he will miss this weekend. And actually, it looks as though he'll have to miss Abu Dhabi as well, because of it being 2 weeks self-isolation. By the time that all ends, I think practice sessions and qualifying might be already be done. So there's this search at the moment for Mercedes, Jack, where they've got to find a replacement, at least for this weekend. And it looks as though the favourite is Stoffel Vandoorne, who's one of their drivers as a reserve, but is part of Formula E as well. And he was doing Formula E testing in Spain today, I think it was, and he actually put out on Instagram that he's got a plane to catch to Bahrain. So it looks as though he's going to be the Mercedes man. But I'm sure there's somebody else you'd rather it was.
Jenson Button.
Oh, that would be beautiful, wouldn't it? Oh, Alonso.
Yeah. Just bring him back. But no, I mean, for me, I think it's obviously got to do. I think Stoffel Vandoorne is obviously the easier option. Hulkenberg's been put out there. Hulkenberg's everybody's free agent at the minute, isn't he? But I mean, in terms of obviously Vandoorne, like you said, is probably the easiest option for Mercedes. You know, he's been to a couple of races this year. There was talk of him actually going to German Grand Prix to replace Stroll, but obviously Hulkenberg was closer and they managed to sort that deal out. But I think
literally an hour away.
Yeah, he literally just drove there, didn't he, in the morning? But I think for me, if you are obviously looking to the future, Stoffel Vandoorne isn't really going to be involved in F1, to be honest. So you're looking at, if you're Mercedes, you're maybe a future driver that you're going to have in the team. And for me, having George Russell in that seat this weekend would just be a golden opportunity to maybe weigh up where he is, because even in testing, most of the time you look at Bottas and Hamilton are probably going to do most of the testing because there's so little testing in these cars anymore. So you just think this is like a perfect testing time. Mercedes have already won the constructors. Hamilton's already won the championship. Williams aren't going to get any points. So what is the point? What's stopping it apart from the logistics of maybe the money that Mercedes might say, yeah, Williams, here's a bit of money for this weekend to compensate for us taking Russell. We'll try and help you you can have Vandoorne or something or whatever. Having that in that car, because I think Bottas and Russell this weekend really does. I mean, Bottas has got to up his game because he has struggled in the last few weeks. I mean, again, he's super unlucky because he seems to run over absolutely everything that's on the circuit that can damage him in any way. But I just think, a proper head-to-head this weekend would be, for me, it would be a proper duel in the desert. I know we've said that a few times with Mercedes drivers, but I think it really would be to see where is George Russell, because he gets absolutely everything out of that Williams. He's Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. He wins the hell out of that Williams. Anything that's there, he gets it. And we've seen that from the qualifying this year. So, giving him the opportunity of the big car of the Mercedes, I mean, for me, that's just, what we want to see when everything's done and dusted in terms of the championship. Let's see something else.
Yeah, I mean, I'd welcome it. I think, as you say, there'll be some Hulkenberg fans hoping to finally say he'll get a race win under his belt, or at least a podium with that car. But yeah, I agree. I think for future benefits, you've got to get George Russell in there. And I'm sure if Williams must know a few people that would take his seat for the next two races at least. And, they'd understand, because Russell is not going to be at Williams forever. So, yeah, I'd welcome it. But just imagine if Stoffel Vandoorne wins a race for Mercedes after all the misery he had at McLaren. Season's been, off the track stuff this season has been absolutely crazy. We've had everything.
We've seen everything, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think, like I said, Stoffel Vandoorne is the easier option for Mercedes to do, but George Russell is on this streak of not getting any points, and I just think, wouldn't it be funny if he went from having no points to 25 and having a race win? Like, he could, that's something that he could do if he got everything out of that car. But I think, like you mentioned before we started this video, I mean, what happens if Russell is better than Bottas this weekend? If he did manage to get that Mercedes seat, I mean, Bottas would be like, Christ, I lost to Hamilton, and Russell's come in for one race weekend, and he's already pipped me to it. So, personally, for me, that's what I want to see. Like I said, the championship's done and dusted. Mercedes don't really need to, save anything and have any issues. The car. He's only got two races left. I know it's sort of the same thing for next year. There's only so many minor changes that they're making. But I just think, let's just go for it. Let's have something to actually look forward to this weekend. And, Vandoorne or maybe Hulkenberg or whatever. But like I said, for future reference, because I think we all know that Bottas will take Russell will take Bottas's seat eventually, should I say. So
how long is Hamilton going to be in F1 for? He hasn't got his extension yet.
Totally. I think, he's already equaled Michael Schumacher's record. Will he just go for the next year's and win the 8th and then think that'll do? He's got so many other things he's doing.
I have this feeling because I think Toto Wolff will stay for one more year, and I honestly think when Toto Wolff goes, Hamilton goes, maybe because that bond is just not there anymore. Niki Lauda's gone. Niki Lauda's the man that got Hamilton to Mercedes in the first place, and at the time when Hamilton started at Mercedes, it was Ross Brawn at the top. So yeah, it's interesting. I have this feeling next year could be Hamilton's last year in F1, which, look, as you said, he's done it, and I think he'll no doubt be the favourite to win it next year. And I think if I was Hamilton, if I was in his mindset, one more year, 8th World Championship, done. You've done the record. You've set a standard. Now let someone else give way and give someone else a chance. Because, we'll see. Something we could talk about again on the Let's Talk Sport channel in a few weeks, months, or whenever it happens. Time could be years. Could be 10 years, and we'll be like, "Oh, Jack, do you remember when we said he'd retire in a year's time? Yeah, he's still driving, the bastard."
He's won his 17th World Championship.
Brilliant. And then Alonso's always been runner-up. But let's move on to one last topic, and that is Sergio Perez. Now, in the last few hours, Sergio Perez has been linked to Ferrari for the reserve seat for 2021, which, for a guy who hasn't got a seat anywhere for next year and looks very well, looks as though he's going to get a Hulkenberg, isn't it? Where, a very good driver is going to miss out because of someone's rich daddy. But Jack, I guess you'd take it if there's no other options. But Red Bull have said that they'll confirm their seats at the end of the year. So he's still got to wait for that, I guess.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think it would be very surprising if they now got rid of Albon, because I think they've been taking a lot of criticism with what they did to Gasly. That I think that if they then did the same to Albon, it would just look like a vicious circle. So I feel like they're giving Albon a lot longer than they gave Gasly, just because of what they did with, Pierre, who I think has drove superbly. I think it's one of his best seasons, if not his best, Gasly this season. I think he's been tremendous. And obviously, like we know, he's a race winner. So, he's...
I can't get over that.
Yeah, he's been absolutely... I mean, the third place, was it last year in Brazil, was crazy enough. But, yeah. So, I mean, Gasly's already, for me, a lot better where he is. I think he's happier where he is. I think there's just something with that second Red Bull seat. I don't know what it is. I think you could put the best driver on the grid in there alongside Verstappen, and I think they'd still struggle. I don't know what it is. There's just something. There's something in that team. I can't get my get my thing on it. It's really difficult, because there's just something with that second Red Bull seat for me. And I think, Albon's a good driver. He has highlighted that. He had a great season, half a season with Toro Rosso before he went to Red Bull. And obviously he's done a few bits. Like I said, he did get a podium this weekend, but obviously we'll discuss that it was obviously a Perez retirement that gave him that. So he is sort of in the right place at the right time at the minute, to pounce and get a podium and get them points. But when you see he's still so far off Max Verstappen, whether it be qualifying or the race, he's still so far behind. And I don't know. For me, I love seeing young drivers, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of George Russell, Lando Norris, and Alex Albon is in that category as well. But I just think you've got somebody like Sergio Perez, and you just see what he does. I mean, what he did with that car this weekend, and he's so good at tyre management. He's so good at getting consistent laps with tyres that have gone off the cliff 10 laps ago.
Saving the environment.
Yeah, he's not. When he first came in, again, it was a little bit like, oh, he's in with the money, with consortium that's bringing him in. But what he's done since he's been in Formula One, he has improved, and he has become a top driver on the grid. There's no doubt, and I think he is somebody this year that will lose out big time, and will lose out big time if we don't see him on the grid next season. And obviously, I think if people have watched these videos before, they know you're a huge Sergio Perez fan, and how gutted you're going to be if he doesn't make the grid next year. But
well, I do actually have. I think I've still got it. No, hang on, it's somewhere here. I can't find it.
Please hold.
Please hold. There we go. I've even got Perez's little mini helmet from his McLaren days, which
his McLaren days.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad time, but big Perez fan. But it's a tricky one. I mean, it's the fact that he could finish fourth this year, which is quite an incredible achievement for racing.
Considering he was out for two races? Considering he was out for 2 races.
Yeah. And he's, and it's such a shame because the retirement on
Yeah.
Sunday with 7 laps to go was his first time he didn't get points.
Yeah. I think it was only
Such
3
a
laps,
shame.
wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I can't. But either way,
I
it just
think it was
felt.
worse than that because I'd be
Well,
really annoyed. Like I was gutted for him because you're like 3 or 4 laps from the end, and to be honest, I made me laugh that he was still trying to put the throttle down, and the fire was absolutely busting out. He's like, "No, I've got 3 laps. Come on, I've got 3 laps.
But it's
Keep it going."
like you kind of want to scream to him. Did you see the Grosjean crash? Yeah, you don't want to be in that mistake, mate.
I'll just let it go. It's all right. Keep going, keep going. But absolutely, no. Honestly, gutted for him. And I think as much as the team have brought in Vettel, and obviously they weren't going to get rid of Stroll, I think they are gutted that they are losing him. I really do. I think as much as they obviously are kicking him out of the team and they have given him his P45, I personally still think that everybody in that team is gutted to be losing them. Whether it's because they know deep down they are losing him because Stroll's in there because of Lawrence, I don't know, and whether the other people of the team are gutted for that sake. But I will go on record this year and say that Lance has impressed
Has had a good
me.
year.
Impressed me. I will put that, I've never been a big Lance Stroll fan because of, how he's got into the sport, but a lot of drivers do that nowadays, so I can't really have a go at him specifically. But I think he's really impressed me, and that pole lap in Turkey, in the wet, in really, poor conditions, he put out an absolute blinder, and some races this year, he has done, has put in great performances. So, I can still see why they're bringing him, they're keeping him, and obviously Vettel coming in, Vettel getting a podium in Turkey. I know we haven't spoke about that as well, but
Good old Vettel.
kudos for Vettel for that, I suppose, for confidence. So, I know why they're bringing him in as well, but it just, to lose Sergio Perez's like caliber and experience as a driver is going to be bad. And I just think that Red Bull probably won't make that move for Perez. But then I'll go back to the Ferrari thing, but Ferrari have got so many people in their academy. So would they, it's a bit like Red Bull, would they take Perez? Is that a story?
I can't see it. I mean, it was funny because Perez was part of the Ferrari program when he started out with Sauber, and he ditched that for McLaren, which at the time made sense because McLaren were capable of winning races the season before he joined. So, you're taking over Lewis Hamilton's seat as well, which was big shoes to fill, but it was, you're not going to say no, are you? What's the point of being F1 if you can't take the big opportunities? Always, you may as well go home. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think he'll have a year out. He even said in an interview in Spanish yesterday that he had plans for 2022 to come back to F1. So if that's the case, then maybe he'll have a sabbatical year. Sadly, it's not really worked out for someone like Hulkenberg. So we'll see. But Ocon it did, exactly. And I think when you've got those recent things going on, it certainly inspires them to try it.